I'm Jess, a 26-year-old nurse who's seen enough to know life ain't always a smooth ride. The day that rock band rolled into town was a break from the usual chaos. Their music was my escape, something my soul craved more than my next breath. That night, I decided to let loose, heading to their concert alone, not knowing it'd change my life. The arena was packed, the air electric with anticipation. I wove through the crowd, finding a spot that felt like it was made just for me. That's when I bumped into him, literally. A tall guy with a mischievous smile, wearing a band tee that looked like it had seen better days. "Hey, watch it!" I snapped, more out of surprise than annoyance. "Sorry, didn't see you there," he replied, his grin widening. "You here alone?" "Yeah, and by the looks of it, so are you." I shot back, my defenses up. He laughed, a sound that seemed to cut through the pre-concert buzz. "Name's Tom. And yeah, I wouldn't miss this for the world. These guys are like the soundtrack to my life." "Jess," I said, offering a hand grudgingly. His grip was firm, reassuring somehow. "Same here. Grew up with their music." We chatted as if we'd known each other for years, not minutes. Tom had a way of making me laugh, really laugh, something I hadn't done in a while. When the concert started, we were lost in the music, together yet alone in our little bubble. After the encore, neither of us wanted the night to end. "Know a decent cafe around here?" Tom asked, his eyes searching mine. "Might do. Follow me," I said, leading the way. The cafe was quiet, a stark contrast to the concert's frenzy. We found a secluded corner, our conversation flowing as easily as the coffee. "So, nurse, huh? Bet you've got stories," Tom said, his voice a mix of curiosity and respect. "More than I can count. And what about you? What's your deal?" I asked, leaning in. "I work in IT. Not as exciting as saving lives, but it pays the bills." He shrugged, a hint of humility in his eyes. We talked about everything and nothing, from our craziest dreams to our mundane daily gripes. It felt natural, easy. Before we knew it, hours had passed. "Should probably get going," Tom said reluctantly. "But I don't want this to be the last time we talk." "Me neither," I admitted, feeling a connection I couldn't quite explain. We exchanged phones, typing in our numbers with the promise of a call. As we said goodbye, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was the music, the night, or just Tom himself, but I walked away feeling lighter, my heart pounding in my chest. After a few months of dating Tom, the day came to meet his family, or more accurately, his mom. He'd been upfront about living with her, saying she was all he had in terms of family. I respected that. My own family was just my grandma, after all. Tom's place was modest, a cozy little house with a garden that looked like it needed a bit of love. "Mom's inside," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice as we approached the door. It struck me then how important this was to him, and suddenly, I was the one feeling jittery. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her late 50s, her hair a tangle of curls, eyes sharp as they landed on me. "So, you're Jess," she said, her voice carrying a note that I couldn't quite place. Was it curiosity? Suspicion? "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Johnson," I offered, extending a hand that she took after a brief hesitation. "Call me Linda," she said, leading us into the living room. The place was neat, filled with photos of Tom at various ages. It was clear he was the center of her world. We sat, and Linda wasted no time diving in. "Tom tells me you're a nurse. That's a hard job. You plan on doing that long?" I nodded, sensing where this was heading. "I love my job, but I'm also planning to study further, maybe become a doctor someday." Linda's eyes narrowed a bit. "A doctor, huh? That's a lot of school. Expensive, too." Tom jumped in, trying to smooth the waters. "Mom, Jess is really passionate about her work. It's one of the things I admire about her." Linda turned her gaze to Tom, and then back to me, her expression softening slightly. Tommy here has always been my rock. After his dad left, it was just the two of us. I've given everything to him, you know. I caught Tom's eye, a silent communication passing between us. I knew this was hard for him, torn between the two most important women in his life. Linda continued. I rely on Tom for a lot. He's been so good to me, giving me half his salary every month. It's only fair, after all I've sacrificed. The air in the room felt heavier, the tension palpable. I didn't know what to say. It was clear Linda expected this arrangement to continue, even with me in the picture. And what about your family, Jess? Linda's question snapped me back to the moment. I was raised by my grandmother, I said, my voice steady. My parents died when I was young. Grandma's all I have. Linda nodded, a strange satisfaction in her eyes. Well, if you and Tom are serious, I'd expect you to contribute as well. $800 a month should cover it. I choked on the tea I'd been sipping. $800? Tom's hand found mine under the table, squeezing it gently. We'll work something out, Mom. Jess and I are a team now. When Tom and I decided to tie the knot, we knew it wouldn't be a lavish affair, but nothing prepared me for the battle over our wedding plans. Linda had her own ideas about saving money, which basically meant cutting down our guest list to a handful and scrapping any unnecessary celebrations. I wanted simple, sure, but I also wanted some joy, some celebration of us. One evening, as we sat down with Linda to discuss the wedding plans, the tension was thicker than the coffee Tom had brewed. So, I was thinking, Linda began, in that way that told you she wasn't just thinking, she was deciding. Why waste money on a big venue when we have a perfectly good backyard? Tom squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. Mom, Jess, and I were hoping for a bit more, celebration. Not just a backyard thing. Linda's eyes narrowed, her lips pursing in that familiar line of disapproval. And who's going to pay for this celebration? You two? With what money? I took a deep breath, readying myself. We've been saving, Linda. And it's not like we want something extravagant. Just something a bit more special than the backyard. Linda scoffed. Special? You think spending money you don't have on one day is special? You know what's special? Security. Not starting your married life in debt. I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I held my ground. We understand the value of money, Linda. We're not talking about going into debt. Just a modest celebration at a small venue. We've done the math. Despite Linda's protests, we managed to reach a compromise of sorts, a small venue, close family and friends, and a strict budget. Linda insisted on overseeing the catering, claiming she could cut costs, which meant we ended up with a buffet that was more potluck than professional. On the day of our wedding, the venue looked, well, modest. My grandma, the one person from my family there, whispered to me as I readied myself. This Linda, she's a piece of work, isn't she? Just remember, dear, you're marrying Tom, not his mother. The ceremony was short and sweet. Tom looked handsome, and when I walked down the aisle towards him, the look in his eyes told me we'd made the right choice. It was our moment, and even Linda couldn't tarnish that. At the reception, as guests mingled and the homemade buffet was served, Linda took it upon herself to remind everyone how much money we'd saved. Just think what they can now put towards their future, she announced to a group of our friends, who nodded politely, their expressions a mix of amusement and sympathy. Tom's best man, Mike, a childhood friend who knew the family dynamics all too well, leaned over to us with a grin. Hey, at least she didn't charge entry, right? I laughed, the tension of the past weeks melting away in the warmth of the moment. Tom wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. We did it, Jess. Despite everything, we did it. Yeah, I agreed, leaning my head against his shoulder. And now, we start our lives together, just us. And Linda, Tom added with a wry smile, earning him a playful jab in the ribs from me. Settling into married life with Tom was like navigating a boat on choppy waters. Our tiny rented apartment became our haven, a place where we planned to build our future together. But the shadow of financial strain loomed large over us, darkening even our brightest moments. One chilly evening, as we sat huddled over our budget spreadsheet, the reality of our situation hit me hard. "Look at this, Tom," I said, pointing at the screen. "After rent, bills, and your mom's $800, there's barely anything left for us." Tom rubbed his eyes, weary from the long day. "I know, Jess. But what can we do? Mom depends on that money." I sighed, frustration bubbling inside me. But does she really need that much? We're barely scraping by as it is. And we've been putting off so many things, like fixing the car, and even thinking about a down payment for a house. Tom's expression hardened, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Jess, we've been over this. My mom raised me by herself. It's my duty to take care of her now." The argument ended with us in a tense silence, each stewing in our own stubbornness. But it didn't end there. Linda, ever the persistent one, took to calling me regularly, each conversation a thinly veiled reminder not to forget the $800 monthly tribute to her bank account. And when calls didn't cut it, she'd appear at our doorstep, lamenting her hard life and hinting heavily that a little more financial support wouldn't go amiss. I did my best to ignore the hints, to smile and nod and change the subject. But it grated on me, the constant pressure, the relentless reminders of a debt Tom felt we owed. Finally, one evening, after another of Linda's visits, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Tom, we need to talk about your mom," I started, the day's frustrations bubbling to the surface. "I'm tired, Tom. Tired of the hints, the constant pressure for more money. We're saving for a down payment, for our future. Can't she see that?" Tom's face went from puzzled to dark in seconds. "My mom is always right, Jess," he said, his voice icy. "You have no right to talk about her like that. She sacrificed everything for me." His words hit like a slap. "So what, our plans, our future, doesn't count for anything?" I shot back, anger rising. That was it. Tom shut down, walls up, and suddenly we were two strangers living in the same space. He wouldn't talk to me, not really. Our conversations dwindled to nothing, replaced by messages left on stickers on the fridge. Need milk. Working late. The bare minimum of communication. One rare evening, when the silence felt a bit less oppressive, I decided to broach the subject, the words tumbling out of me before I could think better of it. "Tom, do you ever think about, us having kids?" Tom, who'd been half focused on some bills, looked up, his expression unreadable. "Kids? Jess, you know how Mom feels about that. She's already stretched thin with just us helping out." "Yeah, but it's not about her, is it? It's about us, what we want," I said, a hint of desperation creeping into my voice. Tom sighed, setting the bills aside. I know, but think about it. The money, the time. How are we supposed to manage all that? Plus, Mom, she's outright against it. Says it's too much expense, too much hassle." I felt a flash of anger, frustration. So, what? Her word is law now? What about what we want, Tom? What about our life together? The room went quiet again, the air thick with words we couldn't seem to say. Tom finally broke the silence. "I just don't think now's the right time, Jess. Maybe later, when things are better." The next day, Linda's unannounced visit threw gasoline on the already smoldering embers. "I heard you two talking about kids," she started, her tone accusatory as if the mere thought was an affront to her. "Yeah, so?" I said, my patience worn thin. Linda's eyes narrowed. "So, you think you can just bring kids into this mess? You can barely take care of yourselves. Where do you think the money for that will come from? Out of what you should be giving me?" Her words stung, not because they were true, but because of the blatant disregard for our autonomy, our desires as a couple. It's our life, Linda. Our decision. I shot back, my voice firm. Your decision? No, my son's decision. And he knows better than to make a foolish mistake like that, Linda countered, her voice rising. The argument spiraled from there, voices raising, words that couldn't be taken back flying between us. It ended with me saying something I'd never thought I'd have to. Maybe we shouldn't see each other for a while. This is too much. Linda left in a huff, and Tom, when he found out, sided with her. Our home felt more like a battleground, each of us entrenched in our positions, the idea of starting a family now a no man's land between us. It started with a phone notification that blinked innocently enough, but held a punch that knocked the wind out of me. Tom had transferred $1,000 to his mom this month, not the usual $800. My mind raced, confusion and anger swirling together. When I confronted him, his response was as cold as the look in his eyes. It's my decision, Jess. It's for my mom, he said, his voice flat, leaving no room for discussion. But we agreed on a budget, Tom. We have our own needs, our own plans. How could you just change that without even talking to me? I shot back, my voice rising with every word. Tom shrugged, a dismissive gesture that stung more than I expected. Things change. I don't have to consult you on everything. That was the moment I felt it, the crack in what I thought was solid, the betrayal of our partnership. But the worst was yet to come. Days later, a friend from work, Carrie, called me, her voice hesitant. Jess, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I think you should know. She trailed off, the pause heavy with dread. What is it, Carrie? I urged, a sinking feeling in my stomach. I saw Tom's profile on a dating site. He even messaged me, not realizing who I was at first. I'm so sorry, she finished, her voice a mix of sympathy and discomfort. My world stopped. The air left my lungs in a rush, and I felt dizzy. Are you sure? I managed to whisper, clinging to a thread of hope that it was all a mistake. Yes, I'm sure. I can send you the screenshots if you want, Carrie offered, and true to her word, she did. The evidence was undeniable. There was Tom's picture, his profile, and the messages he'd sent, flirting, suggesting they meet up. The betrayal cut deep, a wound I wasn't sure could ever heal. When Tom came home that night, I was waiting, the screenshots glowing accusingly on my tablet. His reaction was one of shock, then anger, not at being caught but at being confronted. What, you're spying on me now? Invading my privacy? He exploded, the audacity of his anger almost laughable. Spare me, Tom. How long? How long have you been doing this? I demanded, my voice shaking with emotion. Tom's anger fizzled out, replaced by a resignation that was somehow worse. I don't know, Jess. A while, I guess. I needed something else. Something more. More than me. More than us, I said, the reality settling in like a stone in my stomach. Yeah, I guess so, he admitted, and with those words, the last of my hope evaporated. I want a divorce, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Tom looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I married. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a cold indifference. Fine, he said simply. If that's what you want. The divorce proceedings were quick, devoid of the messy entanglements that come with shared assets or children. I moved back to my grandmother's house, the only place that still felt like home, carrying with me the pain of betrayal, but also a sense of relief. 3 months post-divorce, and life had started to settle into a new kind of normal, or as normal as it could get without Tom and his mom, Linda, in the picture. That is until my world got rocked again, but this time by loss. My grandmother passed away, leaving behind a void no one could fill. Along with the heartache came a surprise. She left me her house and a hefty sum of $800,000. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more surreal, Linda showed up at my doorstep, bursting with a kind of frantic excitement that felt out of place given the recent funeral. "Jess, darling. I heard about your inheritance. What a blessing." Linda gushed, not wasting a second on pleasantries. I stared at her, incredulous. "Linda, what are you doing here?" She brushed past me into the house, as if we were still family. "Now that you've come into this money, you can surely afford to help me out a bit more. Not just the usual $1,000, but maybe double that? And, oh, a small gift wouldn't hurt. Something nice, expensive." Her words were like a slap in the face, each one more absurd than the last. But it was her next statement that really threw me. "And since you're so well off now, I suppose it's okay for you to have a baby with Tom. I mean, with this kind of money, why not?" I couldn't help it, laughter bubbled up from within me, loud and uncontrollable. Linda looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. "Linda, you do know Tom and I are divorced, right? 3 months ago. Your son and I are done. Over." The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, disbelief, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Divorced? But Tom never said." Why would he hide that? Maybe because he didn't want to crawl back to Mommy's house? Or maybe he thought you'd cut him off financially? I shrugged, the absurdity of the situation not lost on me. Linda fumbled for her phone, dialing Tom in a frenzy. The conversation was short and heated, her voice rising with every word until she finally hung up, her face pale. He said it's true. Said he didn't tell me because he wanted to maintain independence. Independence. Now he tells me this, when we could have been rich. "Linda, it's time for you to go," I said, my patience wearing thin. She stood, defeated, but then, with a last-ditch effort, she turned to me. "Jess, can't you reconsider? For the sake of the family? Tom made a mistake, but surely—" I cut her off with another round of laughter. "Linda, there is no family, not between me and Tom. And after everything, you really think I'd go back to him? Please, leave." One morning, as I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, the sun casting gentle patterns on the table, there was a knock at the door. Hesitant, I approached, half expecting Linda or, worse, Tom, to be on the other side. Instead, I found an old friend from nursing school, Maya, her face bright with a smile that was both comforting and contagious. "I heard about your grandma, Jess. I'm so sorry. And then I heard about, well, everything else," Maya said, stepping inside as I waved her in. We sat down, and over coffee, we caught up on life, on the turns mine had taken, and on her adventures since we last spoke. It was Maya who, after hearing my story, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Jess, it's time. Time to move on, for real. You've got this chance, this freedom. What's stopping you from taking the leap?" Her words struck a chord. "I've been thinking," I started, my mind racing with possibilities. "Maybe it's time to go back to school, like I always wanted. Get that degree, move into a field I'm passionate about." "Yes." Maya clapped her hands, her excitement palpable. "That's the spirit. Look, life's thrown you some curveballs, but you're still standing. And now you've got this incredible opportunity to do something just for you." The conversation with Maya lit a fire under me. It was the push I needed to finally make a decision, to move forward with purpose. I started researching programs that night, my heart set on advancing my career in a way I'd only ever dreamed of. But life has a funny way of testing you. Just as I was settling into this new chapter, Tom appeared on my doorstep one evening, looking every bit the man I once thought I knew. "Jess, can we talk?" he asked, a nervous edge to his voice I wasn't used to. I hesitated, a part of me curious, another part wary. "All right, Tom. Talk." He shuffled uncomfortably, looking around as if searching for the right words in the air around him. I heard about your inheritance. And about what you're doing with it. Going back to school, that's great, Jess." I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. "Thanks, Tom. Was there something else?" He sighed, a deep, weary sound. I guess I just wanted to see if there was a chance for us. I've been doing some thinking, Anne. No, Tom, I cut him off, my voice firm but not unkind. There's no chance for us. Not anymore. I've moved on, really moved on. And you should too. As he turned to leave, I felt a weight lift, a final closure on a chapter that had dragged on too long. In the days that followed, I found myself more focused, more determined. I was building a life on my own terms, free from the expectations and disappointments of the past. My studies gave me a sense of direction, and my grandmother's inheritance allowed me the freedom to pursue my dreams without restraint.